This is just a quick workflow guide, explanation, however you want to call it, for people, because I made a comment in my good and bad about Cyberpunk, and I made a quick reference about like the garbage bin and all that, and correct optimizations and workflow and stuff like that. I thought I'd put out a quick visual guide so people can understand what I was talking about and how a good game company will do something opposed to how a bad game company will do it. Um, this does also work in Dreams if you want to do it this way, but in Dreams, because of the way the actual game engine or the program works, it's got a lot more leeway. But visually, this is a good guide. With the game development, just say you're making Cyberpunk or Grand Theft Auto or Saints Row, anything like that kind of that's got a nice open world, has a as an actual player character, has it as interactive environments and stuff like that. This is the technique you would use, correct technique that you would use to make your game world. Not necessarily the coding part of it, but the graphics, visuals, and physics-based side of it. Obviously, coding is a completely different technique. It's you got to write the if you know the coding, you got to write the coding as best you can, finish the segment, run the code, hope the code works. If there's an issue, correct that issue. I can show you a very simplified version in Dreams on how to do that as well. But generally speaking, I'm just going to go for the visual part because in my good and bad video about Cyberpunk, I made the comment about how CD Projekt um, you just threw optimization and workflow out the window. Communication, anything like that, it was thrown out the window. Like they, there was none of that used. Um, as you can see here, I've made a split down the middle example. The left side is what you'd call your early dev. On the right side, what you'd be call, I suppose you can say pre-release, alpha, beta, that kind of thing. And then obviously the next step after this would be further along than the right hand side. But I'm not going to worry about the end product because you can go to any game and see the said end product. But I thought I'd just show you physically, like visually, well, what the differences are. They're both an equal example of what it's going to be. Think of it as a footpath with a trash can, a player character, and a lamppost next to a road. As you can see on the left-hand side, if I go to the play mode, as you can see on this side here, this is what you'd call the early testing stage. It's got all the stuff around it, the garbage bin, the pole, but it's like super low poly, no textures, very basic. So that the testers can come in and go, oh yeah, okay, I can bump into the pole. The garbage can is there. Okay, the standard jump on that is actually annoying me. Let me just fix that so you can come into here and go to, where is it? Oh, it's already turned off, but I'm going to just quickly run a, because I believe when you possess it, this is nothing to do with the subject I'm talking about. It's just a, this particular thing has this niche little setting I hate. I'll just do a quick workaround there. Auto jump and disable. Thank you. Let's try that again. Yeah, so as I was saying, it's got the bin, it's got the telegraph pole. As you can see, the telegraph pole, it's not detailed, it's just a cylinder. The bin is just a cylinder. The character is your very basic rigged character. There's no details, it's just purely so that you can walk around the world. If there's a mechanic, for example, jump, activate and stuff like that, or basic animations, you'd put them in at this stage, the stage on the left of the screen. Then as you go, okay, everything seems to be on the good workflow, you would then come across to this one. Oh, I missed the texture bit on the back. It doesn't matter. As you can see, the details are getting added. So they'll add the sculpts for the character. Again, I'm not going into like full-on details because let's face it, if you want to make the character look hyper realistic or you want to make it look cartoon, so if you're making like a Kingdom Hearts, you would go to the cartoony style, Grand Theft Auto, Saints Row, or the Call of Duty, you go hyper realistic. But I'm not going into that side of it. I'm just going into the fact that like on the left is the early layout stage, and on the right is the detail where they start doing the textures. And at both of these stages, testing would happen, and that puppet's doing the same one. Okay. Let me just go in there and fix that. Do the same as what I did with the other one. Okay, switch. That, there we go. Okay, now that's fixed. Let's get back into it. Okay, so as you can see, like I've got a garbage bin there. And if you look, the garbage bin is slightly higher detail. This is where I was saying with the LODs. This is where the level of detail will come in. On this side here is your layout or early test stages and stuff like that, where you'd throw in your models at super low polys that have no details, no textures, just your basic layout. That bin is just literally just a short cylinder, so you can get the scaling correct. Then you come to this side, and then you would add a low LOD, a low polygon or a low pixel or whatever model, and you'd retest. Okay, it still bumps in. Like as you can see, that's got the little step on, so you can go, okay, does that interfere with the character? It does a little bit. If you need a bug test that, you can. Some of the bin, like that bin's movable, but as you can see, I can't move it. So okay, you'd come into this is where the program part comes in. You get into the program, you'd go okay. That needs to be lighter, so let's turn its density down to about there. And then you'd retest. You'd rinse and repeat until you're happy with the way it runs. And then from this stage, some game companies that you get early access or alphas and betas, they would normally be in like this stage. The models aren't the final models, but they could be a polygon version of it or a stand-in. So like a lot of game companies would put free to use trees around the scenery just to fill scenery in. And then as they go to the next stage, which would be like final release, they would get their own models, plonk it in, and again they'll do a test and then release. Cyberpunk or CD Projekt, they just completely threw this at the window and went straight to the third stage. The stage is not shown here. They skipped over these two stages. And that is why the game runs like crap. A lot of game companies will actually show footage of this stage here. You better go onto their websites or whatever, YouTube channels, and you can see the game in this stage. They can say, this is what we're working towards. But normally speaking, a game company will start showing it at about this stage, the one on the right, where it's at the, we're getting close. Generally speaking, like for with Cyberpunk or Grand Theft Auto, the location, like the map, is set up on this stage. So you go, okay, a gun shop here, clothing shop here, food shop here, your apartment here, the roads are in this location. You get it set up. You do a heap of play testing. Yes, the map feels good. It's not too big, it's not too small. It doesn't feel like you're running across the map just to do a simple task. But it also doesn't feel like you just have to step out the door to complete everything. That's done in this stage, the one on the left. Then you'd come to this stage. This is where you'd start tweaking things like the lighting. So that's why I've got the light up there. Okay, lighting would go here. The sun would move in this direction. Sound effects, like what sound effects is going to make. What's interactable, what's not. And that bin still doesn't move, so you can come in. You do all your tweaking. So you come in there, let's tweak this. We'll turn that right down. We'll turn that down even further. Until you get it, it's still not moving. Until you get it, oh, no, it's not moving. So yeah, and this is why the game companies would do testing. So if I bring up this one here, it's because the hitbox here. Forget about that. That white cylinder is a hitbox. In games, that is what they would be tweaking. So for example, what it can collide with, so on and so forth. And that is why they would test. So if I bump into the bin now, as you can see, the bin moved. If I come to this one, it'll still knock into it, but it doesn't act exactly how I would like it to act. That is why they would do it this way. This side would be the layout, and you test it. Then you do this stage, we start adding the details. Like as you come into the bin, it's not a full-on detail bin. It is literally a bin-shaped exterior with like a cone to show like an indentation. The final one would be a proper bin shape with like high-quality textures on it. And again, obviously depending on what you're planning on releasing it on, whether the said texture would be standard definition, high definition, 4K, 8K, 12K, whatever. You decide at this point here the model's detail amount and the texture amount. It's like, okay, it's running on a PlayStation 4 Slim or an Xbox One. We don't need high detail. So you'd come onto the item, you'd go, okay, let's grab, we'll put a sticker on. So we'll go boom, boom. Again, not going into mass details, a sticker. Boom, there's a sticker. Now you want text on the sticker. But because it's a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One, it doesn't have to be detailed. So you wouldn't put a 4K texture. You would just put an illusion of texture. So we'll grab a line for text, go boom, boom, and boom. And as you can see, oops, I just fell off. As you can see, it's got a label. And then you'd release it and you go, okay, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC, the game is ready, it's released. And then after it's been out, Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 is announced. Because let's face it, Cyberpunk, it was developed for Xbox One, PS4, and PC. So anyone who says, I'm surprised it runs, they're an absolute moron, because it was developed for those consoles. Xbox Series X and PS5s were not a thing when this game was started in development. When there were these two stages. So they should have been doing these two stages. Most other game companies will do that to some extent. Some questionable game companies will skip this first one and just go to the second one and go, okay, let's throw some free assets in and lay out the world, and then we'll test it from there. And then they'll up the quality of the assets. But that's how a game developer should have their workflow set up. Layout, test it. Low quality or LODs, again, test it. And then they'll go to detailing. So detailing would be, if you're releasing it on a Xbox Series X or PlayStation 5, you can come into here and you can go as fine as you want and go, let's put a, for example, if you want to come in and you go, put a letter. I'm not going to go too hardcore, but just say you want an S. Or whatever similar. You can put that, that's where you put the details in. And just to show you the differences, I've done it so that if I go to here and then go to detail. As you see, everything in here is relatively blue. It's low quality, low demand. Here, as you can see, like the bin, that's a fairly high quality one. The character, fairly high quality, that's why it's redder. All the stuff is a higher quality model. Again, and if it doesn't perform as well as you'd like, you'd come in and you reduce the model's detail quality. So for example, if it's a 1,000 polygon sculpt, you'd make it into a 500 polygon sculpt. And that's how game companies would do LOD in their world. So in Grand Theft Auto, for example, if you're on one side of the city, or if you're up in the hills, in Vinewood Hills on Grand Theft Auto 5, and you're looking to the airport, when you see the buildings at the airport, they would be basically this. Super low poly. Like if the building has 5 sides, it'll have 5 polygons, and rough textures of what the building looks like. Then as you come closer, the polygon will raise. And same with the texture. You'd have 3 variations of the texture. You'd have the one you'd see from a mile away, which would be literally like just a grey pole. Then as you come in, you'd have the low LOD, which would be a grey pole with maybe a yellow square and the black bottom. But then as you get right up next to it, they'll go high quality LOD, and it'll be the texture of the concrete or steel or whatever it's on the pole. The label would be depending on what machine you're running on, whether it's readable or not, that kind of stuff. So that is the workflow of making a game, visual side. Again, coding is different. Coding is, for example, the part with the bin. You'd get the bin, you go, okay, we want a bin there. The coder will come into its properties and stuff like that and go, okay, what property should it have? Should it float? Should it be sticky? Should it be hittable? Should it be movable? That sort of stuff. So if you're making, for example, water, you wouldn't actually hit the water. You'd go through the water. But the water has an effect. So you'd say, okay, whatever's inside the water area would have less gravity and that sort of stuff. That's what the coding section would do. Obviously, in Cyberpunk, both sides of this, they have done something seriously. They have lacked it. But it takes one mistake in, for example, if you get this and go, let's make it, full squashy and full bouncy. By accident, just say they've gone, instead of a 0 here, they've gone a 1 here. And then they play test it. As you can see, that bin is still there, but like when you bump into it, it doesn't act like it's supposed to act. It's because it's squishy and it's bouncy. Same with, for example, in Cyberpunk, when you spawn your car, when you see cars spawn in and they bounce out of the ground and go flying through the air. What they're doing there is when they're placing it, the spawn location, they're doing that. It's inside the ground. The ground's collidable. It's got a collision, so it's going, oh, those two are colliding, and it shoots up into the air. Same with if you accidentally put it up here, it'll drop and it'll bounce. Putting it above the ground is better than putting it in the ground, because obviously you don't get the flying through the air. That's where also in the coding, again, imagine this is a bunch of words and numbers. If they make the density, friction, really hard, and it ignores gravity, it will turn density off to nothing. It's an easy mistake people can do. That's why sometimes in games, the bin is floating away. And that is why sometimes you'll get, I'm trying to think of a game that recently done it. Skyrim with the trolls and the frost giants smack you with the club and you get thrown through the air. That with the gravity thing and the same of the in the ground that those two collide, that collision mathematics in the game code is obviously there's one number that could be wrong, and that's what's causing the thing to do what it's doing. Again, the coders have to then jump in and find it, and then correct it. But generally speaking, this is the way it should be done. And now you've all seen it. So if anyone is curious on how a game developer should, and most of them do it this way. It's just the occasional one that want to cheap out, get an easy buck, will skip these stages. They'll just grab a map, download some models, throw in a new label and go, "Ooh, we made this awesome new game," and it runs like crap. Same with the issue I'm having with Cyberpunk with the nudity sensor. This is all not in this stage. This stage wasn't the problem. They've decided here, this is what the game's like. And at this stage, it's probably a great game. It's probably better than what the actual game is. And then you had this stage, which is probably the stage which all the reviewers, the early access gameplay footages and all that, they probably got this version, which is probably better optimized than the final release. Because what they've done is this part here, probably the lesser graphics, had the lower quality textures on the little small labels, or the polygons weren't as big or something like that. And then as they've gone to the next stage, instead of having this be a 1,000 polygon lamppost and have it run smoothly, they've gone, let's make it a 10,000 polygon lamppost. And when there's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them on screen, it's like tanks the frame rate. And that is why the final version absolutely runs like crap. And that's why when I say it is badly optimized, it's going from this stage to this stage and then final release. They're not doing it correctly. They're like, yeah, we'll just go straight from the idea, which would be over here somewhere. We'll skip the layout. We'll skip the testings and stuff like that in these two stages, and we'll go straight to the high quality stuff and just throw, oh, this has got mass polygons. It's going to look awesome. We'll throw that in the game. It's like, no, because then it's going to tank the frame rate. It's going to look like crap, play like crap, and then people are going to complain. You're better off releasing this version, have them go, oh, that's a good gameplay, and then later on, have a patch that ups the textures and make it an optional patch so that people on PC or PS5 or Xbox Series X get this optional patch and makes all the textures 4 or 8K. And in certain cases, a handful of years down the road, you can come back into the game and instead of having this been the 1,000 polygon, have it the 10,000 polygon and release it as a next gen upgrade. And that is the way a game company should, and most of them do it this way, be done. So I thought I'd put this out there just to explain to people how gaming development, on the visual side, I'm not going to go into the coding side because that's a whole bag of worms that I'm not even going to touch. I'm no expert in the coding side. In fact, I'm pretty low on the list. I haven't done any of the C++s or all that sort of stuff. I've not done any of them. I couldn't tell you the first thing about actual like word-based coding. Visual coding that I think Unreal Engine and Unity actually are starting to implement a lot of. So like what this is based off, where you connect chips together to have them do things. I'm okay at that. I'm no expert. I will admit that I'm no expert, but I know enough to get me past and not to completely screw everything up. So there's the visual guide on gaming development's visual side. So you'd have, over this side you have concepts. So it'll be a lot of drawings, sketches, and like written notes going, we need a gun shop and it needs to be in this area or something like that. Then you'd have the layout, which would be very, very basic, low polygon, usually no textures, maybe different color palettes, but nothing that was going to drain any sort of CPU or graphics engine. And like, it'll be super basic. Then you'd start adding high quality models. You'd start adding the textures and all sorts of stuff, lighting, sound effects, weather, After Effects, and stuff like that would go into this one. And next to that, you'd normally have a slightly more detailed version of this. So you'd go nothing, low quality, then you go like a medium quality. So you wouldn't necessarily have something that needs a really high-end PC to run, and that would normally be the release version. And the company will go, okay, we want to release it on the last gen. This next stage, they'd only up this a little bit. But if they're planning on releasing it on the next gen, so the PS5, Xbox Series X, and high-end PCs, they'd up from this stage a little bit more. And if you're doing two releases, so if you're doing a high-end PC version and a PS4 and Xbox One version, you'd do two of the next upgrades. So you'd go, one version will have a 1,000 polygon, and another version will have a 10,000 polygon lamppost. For example, don't know whether that's the exact polygons they would use. I'm just using a rough example. And obviously the 10,000 polygon one would be the next gens and the high-end PC. The 1,000 polygon would be the PS4 and Xbox One. Both would look respectful. So it's not like, as you can see here, if you're playing that, it doesn't look bad, but it's not realistic. But if you saw that and you saw the lamppost and had a label on it, even if you can't read the label, you'd still go, okay. Like from where I am now, that looks like a respectful, teeth in, respectful. It looks like a good lamppost. Words, man, words are hard. And obviously I've just put a ball there as the light, just to show like they would actually model on actual light there. But I'm just showing you that they would plonk the light there and go, okay, we need a light there. With the next iteration, which would be obviously the release version, that would be an actual, like, you could get, for example, the bin for air, we'll say, and you could put it up on the lamppost, put a little circle in, that'd be the bulb. You could do that as a lamppost quite easily. But it's just to show you. Sketch, design, then you have layout, then you start texturing and detailing, and then you'd have your release. And again, depending on what you're releasing it on how much you would upgrade from here to there. Both these stages here would be heavily tested. I mean, heavily tested. You'd come in, throw it to all your QAs and go, okay, do what you can, try and break the game. If you break the game, let us know what broke. That is what you got to do. So I'm going to call it, but there's your guide. So when you look at a game, you have to look like you're looking at this version over here to the right. And think to yourself, okay, I hate the way the game is playing. At what point here did it go wrong? And then, by all means, do what I've been trying to do with CD Projekt and get nowhere. By the way, I do believe they have blocked me. So that's how little they care about their customer base, because I can no longer put tickets in, and it does say on their website that they hold themselves to have the right of blocking people from putting tickets in. So I believe that's what they've done to me. So again, don't trust them. But these stages here, they've obviously screwed up on it. So I'll move that out of the way. There's your view overview, design, layout, alpha, release. That's the way it should work. So I'm going to call it. You take care of yourselves. Let's hope some decent games come out, because this is getting horrible. I will catch you all next time. Stay safe out there.